My name is Alexandria. That is my real name. If you've read my previous post and listened to the past video, you know about my husband Jackson and my son Sam. Neither of these names is real. If you've read my son's posts, you know he has uncovered something I always hoped he'd never know. When you have a child, you want to protect them at any cost. For my son, I thought that protecting him meant leaving him. But I can see now that in my rush, I forgot that the largest threats can come from those closest to you. In this video, I'm going to come clean. I will answer any questions you might have. I have nothing left to lose. Like I said in my previous video, I married Jack for security. I was so afraid of being possessed again, I would have done anything. He worked for a group called The Organization. It is funded by governmental and special interest groups. It started as a small operation attempting to describe why there was a sudden uptick of violent crime and mental illness in the United States. Scientists asserted that there must have been some scientific reason for the increase. Of course, no one could figure out the reason, so they brought in a small group of people to help. There were 5 of them at first. Serena was a scientist who left her job at Harvard. Mac was a military guy, maybe a general. He died before I could meet him. Anna was a forensic anthropologist just out of college. Ryan was the assistant, but he was the son of some high-ranking political lobbyist. And then there was Jack. He was a criminal profiler and psychologist. The 5 of them would choose cases to investigate. Usually it was extremely violent crimes with perpetrators who both denied doing it and had no criminal record. They were inundated with possible cases, but the first one they chose was a story of a man named Rhett. Rhett was a man who nowadays would be called autistic. Back then in the 80s, they called him mentally retarded. He was considered to have the intelligence of a 5-year-old. He lived with his parents in their Georgia home, and he was arrested in 1978. You won't find him on Google, just like you won't be able to find any of the cases the organization takes a hold of. Rhett was arrested for killing his parents and imprisoning 5 people in his attic. He had prepared the attic with a number of deadbolts and a steel door. The door had a window where he would sit and watch. He never touched any of them. The only thing he did was bring them a large dog bowl of water each day while he was heavily armed. At first, his victims did not understand what he wanted, but once hunger set in, they realized that he was waiting for one of them to snap. They had to eat, right? Eventually, the group agreed to kill the eldest member, Rita, who was just turning 60. They had no weapons, so they decided to kill her by strangulation. Reportedly, it took them 2 hours to fully kill her. The rest then ate whatever they could keep down. Once they were finished with her body, the second oldest, Porter, freaked out and broke the neck of one of the young women. This created chaos in the attic. All of them were sick with hunger and fear, and they turned against each other. Porter killed another person by breaking his nose into a skull, and then the youngest, a 15-year-old named Lacey, loosed a board from the wall and managed to kill Porter by blunt force trauma. She then proceeded to eat the dead for the next 2 days, until the authorities closed in on Rhett and freed her. I think she's still in isolation at a mental institution. But anyway, this isn't about her. When the police got to Rhett, he was not himself. Instead of his typical behavior, he was remarkably calm. He did not speak to authorities. His only statement was written. Rhett was illiterate and unable to write. However, for some reason, after his arrest, he was able to complete a statement. It had quite a few spelling errors, but it was legible and clear. I don't remember the exact words he chose, but it said something like, "Rhett did not murder these people. I will only speak to the Father." They thought he meant a priest, but they were wrong. He was waiting for Jack. The organization got to him in 1980. He gave their very first interview. Jack played it for me so I could hear the voice of a friend. It was terrifying. Their voices defy sound. It is both extremely high and extremely low simultaneously. You have read and listened to the transcript of the interview. It was posted by Sam's account. I'm telling you this because it's important to understand that they have been after us from the start. If you listen to the tape carefully, you can see that the friend who is using Rhett's body seems to know what is going to happen in the future. The organization believes they have access to events that are going to happen, but we don't fully understand how. I went on a tangent about Rhett. I'm sorry. It's just I feel an affinity for him. I know what it's like to do things you don't want to do. The friend left his body during the interview and transferred to Ryan. It killed Ryan by ripping the veins out of his wrists with his own teeth. Rhett was not so lucky. When he regained consciousness, he asked for his mother and father. It was hard to figure out what exactly he believed he had been doing while he was possessed, but it was obvious he had no memory of his crimes. He ended up joining Lacey in the mental institution. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to help you understand. They use people like Rhett to get to the kids. They didn't care about anything except for them. The kids. Sam and Delilah, his twin sister. That is not her real name. I left Sam and his father, but I took Delilah. She was the one they were after. There was something in her they wanted. I thought I could hide long enough to keep her safe, but I didn't keep either of them safe. I failed. There is something special about Delilah. She cannot be possessed. She cried constantly as a baby, and as you know by now, this is how they get to you. I tried to stop her from crying, but throughout her childhood, she was overly emotional. She cried at the slightest thing. When she turned 15, I started to realize that if they were going to possess her, they would have done it already. They either chose not to or couldn't. And then there was something else. Delilah could force a friend to stay in a body. Forever. There is something special about Sam, too. He can be possessed, but only for a short time. In fact, he is a magnet for friends. They flock to his body like moths to a light. Sam has the ability to kick the friend out of his system whenever he's ready to regain consciousness. He never remembers the incidents. Jack used him to speak to the friends directly. Sam must have been possessed hundreds of times over his life. He just never knew it. From reading his last post, I think a friend may be inside him now. But he will kick it out soon. Delilah disappeared January 15, 2016. I think she went to find her brother. Sam and Delilah never met, but I think she always knew he was out there. You might be wondering why I know all this, or how I know about Sam's powers. Well, that's because the day after my last post, Jack showed up at my door.